Hello, I'm Karen Jacques, proud member of Preservation Sacramento Board and a member of Public Accountability for Our Capital, also known as PAC. PAC is an ad hoc group that came together when we found out how much damage the Capitol Annex project was going to do to our beautiful state capitol. PAC's founding members include Dick Cohen and Paula Pepper, two former members of the State Historic Capitol Commission. That was the commission that was supposed to oversee changes to the state capitol and Capitol Park, but was never consulted about the Capitol Annex project. Both Dick and Paula resigned from the commission in protest. Their positions were never filled, so the commission no longer has a quorum and no longer meets. As most of you know, the Capitol Annex, which includes the original 1860s Capitol building and the 1952 Annex building, are on the National Register of Historic Places, as is Capitol Park. As you probably also know, the Capitol Annex project calls for the demolition of the historic Annex building, its replacement by a much larger modern glass building. And it also includes a large new underground parking garage that will extend from L Street to N Street and run roughly underneath where the 12th Street walkway through the park is now, but it will be underground, so probably won't impact that walkway itself. It also includes a new visitor center that will be underground in front of the original Capitol building. And to build that, it will involve eliminating the West Plaza, where so many events and demonstrations have taken place, and replacing that with a long cement ramp that will begin at 10th Street and slant down to the basement level of the historic Capitol building. It will also involve a very large entrance to the Visitor Center right in front of the front facade, the primary facade of the original Capitol building, that will cause drastic changes to that facade. The current cost of the project is estimated at $1.2 billion. The estimate keeps growing. Respected architectural historian Victoria Kastner visited the Capitol recently and made a video where she talks about the importance of what we will lose if the Capitol Annex project isn't stopped.
I'm standing in Capitol Park, what has been called California's front yard. It's not just for the citizens of Sacramento. It belongs to everyone in this state. And just like the beautiful East Annex, which is threatened with demolition, Capitol Park is going to be defaced as well. I'm Victoria Kastner, and for 30 years I was the official historian at a California state park of great beauty, Hearst Castle. And it was my job to enforce the historic preservation laws that govern all public buildings within our beautiful state. I'm standing here in front of a public building which is the essence of our state, and that is the East Annex of the State Capitol building. And currently it is under great peril. The East Annex was built by Alfred Eichler, who was the state architect, and it's one of his finest works. Designing it to carefully mix and blend beautifully, to complement, not dominate, but to complement the state capitol building, to echo its columns and its kind of governmental grandeur, to tell its story with modern materials, aluminum, beautiful bas-reliefs, gorgeous matched marble. And because of the quality of the workmanship and its importance to our history, it could easily be rehabilitated. It was designed to be the pendant piece with his tower bridge, because there's a corridor a mile long from the Tower Bridge to this East Annex building. And so he created something very rare. And that is in 1952, a mid-century modern building that retained the spirit of the optimistic 1930s streamline moderne. This very important historic East Annex is under peril and slated to be demolished for a giant glass building that makes no effort to defer to the primary building of the state capitol. It's going to be a security hazard. It is going to deface this beautiful Capitol Park. But just as the government building was imperiled in the 70s and people were galvanized to act, we can do the same thing. We need to protect this East Annex. We need to make sure that it is rehabilitated. There are rules and laws for how this is to be done based on the California Environmental Quality Act. And the government officials and our state lawmakers have exempted themselves from following those rules. They're not attempting to blend into the state capitol. They're not attempting to save these magnificent trees. They want to deface this beautiful park, build an underground garage, wantonly kill the history all around us. It is not necessary to spend $1.4 billion of the public's money, kill the trees, which are the essence of this place. This was created to be a symbol, a small place, 40 acres, that held all of the wondrous trees of the world. They're 150 years old and more, and many of them have already been cut down and others are slated to die. If this big monstrosity of a building, this insensitive annex, which can't even be called an annex because it dwarfs the size of the original historic state capitol, is allowed to be built. We cannot let the egotism and greed of a few affect all of us as citizens. There's a historic building code in California which mandates exactly how to make it modern, put in fire sprinklers, make sure it's accessible, and yet save our history. Every part of our historic state capitol will be damaged and permanently defaced by this new proposal. People will not be able to assemble as they always have. The West Steps, which have long been the area where all citizens of the state could gather, are going to disappear. The essence of our state's history is not to destroy. It is to protect and to grow, to make sure that we rehabilitate these buildings so that they can have the use for which they were built. We can be respectful of the history of our past. We can save the beauties of this Capitol Park. There's going to be a tremendous amount of destruction, but more than that, this is destruction to our history. This entire compound of our state capitol and our Capitol Park is on the National Register of Historic Places for a reason. This is the heart of California, and it must be saved. What they are trying to do by defacing our historic capitol is taking somewhere and making it anywhere. That building could go anywhere within the state. It should not be vandalizing our historic state capitol.
The annex building is badly in need of repair. Nobody argues with that. In 2018, the legislature approved legislation that called for it to be either repaired or demolished, and also called for a new underground parking garage and large new visitor center. The legislature's Joint Rules Committee was given responsibility for planning the Capitol Annex project, and the Department of General Services was given responsibility for carrying out those plans. There was very little public information available about the project during its development. Per a memorandum of understanding that PAC got via a public records request, 3 people made most of the decisions about the project. Joint Rules Chair, Assembly Member Cooley, Joint Rules Vice Chair, Senate Member Hertzberg, and a representative of the governor's office. 4 lawsuits have been filed to stop the project. 3 of those lawsuits still remain. 2 of the 3 lawsuits are CEQA lawsuits. One was brought by Save Our Capitol, and the other by Save the Capitol, Save the Trees. They are now combined. As you can see on the slide, the suits allege that the Department of General Services and the Joint Rules Committee failed to comply with CEQA by 1, approving the Capitol Annex project without adequately considering feasible alternatives and mitigation measures, and 2, making fundamental changes to the project after the close of the public comment period, depriving the public and other interested decision makers of their rights under CEQA. The combined cases lost at the Superior Court level and were appealed to the 3rd District Court of Appeals. That hearing is going to take place this coming Monday, November the 14th, in the morning. The slide provides you with the address. It's at the Library and Courts building. The appeal hearing is open to the public. It will not be shown online. Anyone who attends needs to wear a mask. We won't know the court's decision for at least 14 days after the hearing, and the court has up to 90 days to render its decision. The 3rd suit that is still active is a suit that's called a pre-commitment suit, and it was filed by Save the Capitol, Save the Trees. It alleges that the Department of General Services and Joint Rules decided to abolish the annex building without giving any consideration to whether its problems could be addressed by rehabilitation, as is required by CEQA when a building is an historic resource. As anyone who looked at the EIR saw, there was no analysis of keeping the annex in the CEQA documents that came out after that decision. The case lost on a technicality at the Superior Court level and was appealed. That appeal also by the 3rd District Appeals Court, the same location as the EIR appeals, takes place on Wednesday, the 16th. And again, the public can go. It will not be on Zoom. If you go, you need to wear a mask. And this slide has got all of the information, again, that you need if you're going. There was, just so that people are aware, there was a 4th case that was filed by Save Our Capitol regarding the failure of General Services and Joint Rules to consult with the State Historic Preservation Officer, commonly known as the SHPO. This is something that's required by law whenever a historic resource is involved. The Superior Court judge's preliminary ruling on that was in favor of Save Our Capitol. Unfortunately, at the very end of the legislative session, Joint Rules Chair Cooley rammed through legislation making the Capitol Annex project exempt from SHPO consultation, and the governor signed the bill. The judge's comment afterwards was, "He gutted your lawsuit like a fish." It was an apt comment, if not your standard judicial language. If Save Our Capitol had been able to win that lawsuit, we would have been able to get a restraining order that could have stopped what's happening in Capitol Park right now and what may be happening inside the annex building itself. As you could see from a lot of the slides in Victoria Kastner's video, there have already been a lot of changes. What was this beautiful park that you're seeing in the current slide has had a great deal of damage. The failure to get the restraining order left the park paying the price. Next slide. This is a picture taken by Steve Davis, who runs a media company and flies a drone and loves the Capitol and has been taking pictures as a volunteer. And this is a picture that takes you over the fence and back to the east side of the East Annex and the park with the trees that used to be in front of it. And you can see what the damage has been. Next slide. This map shows the trees that will be impacted by the Capitol Annex plan if it's built out as planned. And you can see that it takes up a huge section of Capitol Park. The red line is the construction zone line, and there are a ton of trees inside that construction zone. The yellow line is the line beyond the construction zone where trees can still be significantly impacted due to root damage and crown damage. What this slide makes clear is that if we don't stop the Capitol Annex project, there will be a terrible loss in terms of the beauty of many more trees that are still standing, and in terms of all the benefits that trees provide, their carbon absorption, their reduction of heat island effect, all their other ecosystem services. And that a governor and a legislature can claim to care about the climate and allow that to happen is appalling. We kept being told that, oh, don't worry about the trees. Many of them are going to be transplanted. Well, they have been transplanting trees. And as you can see from this slide of the beautiful, once beautiful Senegalese palm tree, it hasn't been successful. The transplant into big containers was done in the heat without water. The trees are simply dying, and other trees have been cut down. Paula Pepper, former member of the State Historic Capitol Commission, is an urban ecologist, and she went and surveyed the trees, and her estimate is that not counting the parkway strips where the entrances and exits to the parking lot will go, that at least 149 trees are at risk of loss, and some 60 of them are already gone, either to being cut down or to dying in their buckets. Next slide, please. As the slide says, the fight is not over. There's still a lot to protect and save. There are still many trees standing. The annex is standing. The EIR court cases are strong, and our attorneys think we have a good chance of winning them. And when I say we, it's the people who brought and groups who brought the suits. It's everyone in PAC. It's everyone else who's been following this. We think we have a good chance of winning at the appellate court level and of getting this project stopped. More and more people are becoming aware of the project, and they're not liking what they're learning. At this point, the group of bars and restaurants around the Capitol are having their business badly impacted by everything that's going on. And if the entire project is built out as planned, it won't be done until sometime in 2026. And they are very upset about their businesses. They're putting signs in their windows, and they're talking about putting up a banner, and they want it stopped. We're getting a lot more press coverage than we were. The Joint Rules Chair Cooley, who's been the prime mover and shaker on this, is up for election. We don't know yet whether he will be elected. The vote count is very close, so we don't know what will happen with that. The Vice Chair Hertzberg will be termed out and out of the legislature as of the end of December. So things are changing, and the fight is not over. Next slide, please. And because the fight is not over, we are still asking for your help in supporting the last pieces of funding our lawsuits. And this slide gives you who you can make your checks out to. It's California Capitol Historic Preservation Society, which is a 501c3, so anything you donate is tax deductible. And then you can mail it. Their post office box is, as the slide says, is 188-155, Sacramento 95818. And we hope you will keep up the fight, and we hope, for the sake of the Capitol and for the historic heritage of California, that we're ultimately able to prevail and at least save everything that's left now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Karen.